Ever since I made a marker review about Ohu markers, people have been asking me what I think about MasterMarkers, as if making one marker review makes me some kind of expert. But hey, I dove in, spent my own money, and bought some of these things, so let's see what they're like, hey? So I purchased these markers in May. I realize this is a bit of a late review, but I really wanted to make this a really good one, you know, okay? Maybe I was just putting it off. But what's done is done. You'll just need to learn to cope with that. So I got the set in A-B combo, so you can purchase them both at the same time, save a little bit of money, and it was about $140. That's a lot of money. So let's figure out if these puppies are worth it. So when you purchase both the set A and set B like I did, you get 160 markers. Now 3 of these markers are actually duplicates because you get 2 black, 2 slate, which are pretty much useless. I mean, they're both black. As well as you get 2 colorless blenders. So that brings the total of unique markers to 157. Out of those 157, 17 of those are different shades of gray. I actually use these markers a lot for like simple shading or for like toning down a saturated color by going over the top of it. So I was actually really glad to see that they had a lot of options when it came to grays. My markers actually came in this clear plastic case, and one of them was actually cracked because the plastic was so thin, and just in shipping it just cracked. However, when I was looking on the website, it looks like they come in a completely different packaging. It's like this nylon portable storage case, which looks really, really cool. And I tried to reach out to the people that make the markers so that, you know, I could do a review of what they're selling now, but like nobody ever responded, and I don't know. I don't even really know who I was emailing to or where to email. So, I mean, it was kind of interesting. So, I mean, not a huge customer support on the side of MasterMarkers. But I mean, the joke's on them, because now I'm showing you this broken box. Anyway, each marker has a black barrel. They have a cap on each end, and on that cap there's the color name, a corresponding number to the color, as well as a color on each end of the cap so that you know what you're picking up. Each marker has both a chisel tip on one end and the long set-out brush nib. And I'm sure you're familiar with what a chisel tip is, since they're very common and they're found in almost every marker in like any price range. But the brush nib is a little harder to find, especially if you're working within a budget. They're very difficult to find. I mentioned on each cap they have a color name, which are cute, but I mean, they're kind of useless because you're not going to color the color banana on a banana. I mean, you might, it's possible. But I really thought was funny, and what I wanted to point out was that they spelled the word banana wrong. What? How do you spell banana wrong? It's just B-A-N-A-N-A. Like, I learned that in 2nd grade. It was literally on a spelling test. Anyway, above each color name, there is a corresponding number, which I don't really know what purpose they have. They don't seem to correspond with other colors in their color group. They're just random numbers. I guess it's just for language barriers to use numbers. I don't know. I also want to mention that the actual colors on the caps don't specifically seem to match the color of the ink inside the marker. I mean, a couple of these do this a lot better than some of the other markers. But for the most part, it's just sort of a vague reference to the color of the ink rather than a direct representation. That is why I think it is very important to create a color swatch key for yourself. And after a little trial and error, I designed this one on the computer rather than the janky one I made for my Ohu markers. I actually decided to organize them by number, which I know I just went on a little rant about how the numbers seem pretty useless, but it actually really helped me. I found this key to work really well. Having all the colors, you know, laid out in front of you helps you choose the exact color you need at like any given time. And the problem I faced was that the colors in the clear plastic, though, they didn't match up with the color swatch key I created. Since the color key I created, the colors were in numerical order, whereas the ones in the box didn't seem to be in any order at all. They were just sort of in there. Like, they weren't numerical. They didn't even go by like color. I mean, it didn't really make any sense. So in the end, I actually just dumped them all out and put them in numerically. That way I spot them on my color key, and then I just go through the numbers, and if it's like in the 300s, I know it's near the end of the order, and if it's in the 100s, it's in the middle, and they're just so much easier to find, and it's really saved me so much time since I purchased these. And like, It's like my biggest recommendation if you buy them is just put them in numerical order. It's just going to save you so much time. After I had dumped them all on the ground and was reorganizing them, I actually noticed that a couple of the colors, the ink that reads the number on them on the side, well, on the caps, I guess, some of them they were actually coming off, specifically Warm Gray 5. I actually played around with it a little bit more and it just kept chipping off. It was like, it was not in good shape. However, the other side still has the name on it, and I rubbed a couple other markers, and like none of their ink came off, so I don't know what was going on with that one. But yeah, a couple of them were a little bit splotchier than others. I decided to compare these markers with other markers that I've tried that I actually liked. One being the Oahu marker, and the other one being the Winsor Newton brush markers. So the Oahu marker, although it's significantly cheaper, I mean, I think I did the math. Oh yeah, it's about 47 cents per marker on Amazon right now. But these markers don't have a brush nib. Instead, I think they have a chisel nib on one end and the bullet nib on the other. If you actually want more information on those, I have a full review of them, and I'll have a link, wherever links are. And I definitely recommend them since they are so cheap and I love them. Anyway, the other markers that I've used a lot are the Winsor Newton brush markers, and they're really pricey. I mean, they're also actually kind of difficult to find. Like, they're hard to get on Amazon. They're like out of stock every other week. It's kind of ridiculous. And the cheapest I've been able to find them was about $2.60 each, which are the 12 packs. And like normally they go for almost $3 to $4 each, which is just a little pricey for me. Okay. And these markers are the most similar to the MasterMarkers actually, because they both have the chisel tip and the brush nib. But the price is so different because when you have the MasterMarkers, if you purchase the full set of 160, you get each marker at about 87 cents, which is about double the Oahu markers, but they're very, very cheap compared to the Winsor Newton or even Copic markers. The catch is you have to purchase the full set of 160 markers, which is about $140. But if you buy the smaller sets, the price doubles. So I think the other set, you can buy like the primary color set or like a skin tone set or something, and each marker ends up being about $1.60. I mean, another downside with MasterMarkers is that they don't sell refills for each marker, and you can't purchase just one marker if you run out of ink, so you'd have to purchase the whole set again, which is a bit pricey, but you can also purchase the smaller sets. If you've seen any of my other marker reviews, you're probably thinking, she hasn't mentioned anything about maybe the cap fitting on the other end of the marker. Maybe because it doesn't. Why? Who designs these markers? Why can't you design a marker so that the cap fits on the other end of the marker so that when I'm using it, I don't lose the marker cap and dry out my marker and have to buy. Oh, they want me to buy more markers. Seriously though, Oahu doesn't pull this kind of stuff, okay? Come on. Get your head in the game, marker companies. This is getting on my nerves. This is my biggest marker pet peeve. Just make it work, okay? Now that I've got that out of my system, I'm going to tell you about my favorite part about the markers. My favorite part is definitely that they have brush nibs. And if you don't know what brush nibs are, they're just a much softer nib. They stick out pretty far from the brush, and they give you like a nice smooth control of the brush. And you can have small lines or thick lines, and they're just, you get a lot more control. And so as an artist, it's a lot more fun to use. They were, in the end, actually the sole purpose that I purchased these for. And people had recommended them to me because they had the brush nibs and because I said I was actually looking for brush nibs. So thank you, people who recommended them. So I'm glad I purchased them. And I'm now doing this review so you know if these are something you would be interested in. And my favorite markers in the pack are actually the pastel ones because I just find it really daunting to use the really dark or saturated colors just because once you put that marker on that paper, there's no erasing it. So I just get really a little nervous. So I really like the pastel ones because they're easy to like place on the paper. They're not too daunting and you can like layer them up pretty well and they're just a lot more fun to use. I think it's just because I'm a major marker noob, but I don't know. So I'm really glad that I got a small variety of pastels in the 160 pack. A large majority of the colors in the pack are dark or highly saturated, which isn't something I love, but I know a lot of people do like those, so I can't fault them for that. So it's whatever. And as for skin tones, this is probably where the set is a little bit most lacking, but you do get like a decent variety of the color brown. So there's some pastel, dark, and highly saturated varieties. But I usually recommend if you're someone who draws a lot of portraits or people, to probably invest in a higher quality skin tone set. Although recently my Winsor & Newton skin tone set has just sort of died on me. All the markers all at once, so I don't know if they just got too old, but they got super streaky, and I don't know, I can't really recommend those anymore. I know this video is getting a little long, but I do want to mention that along with these markers, since I was already splurging way over my budget, I decided to purchase the Master brand pens or fineliners. And it was actually, I found it cheaper to buy the 2-pack rather than just the 1-pack of the black fineliners that I wanted. So that's what I did. And these are actually really awesome and beyond my expectations. I don't know if they're good based on the price because I don't buy a lot of fineliners. I usually get whatever's the cheapest. Like the cheapest on Amazon at the time that I need them. But I was actually most surprised by the colored pens, which are the ones that I didn't want and the ones I wasn't planning on buying. But these turned out really, really cool, and I ended up using them for journaling because they don't bleed through the paper, and they're actually really, really nice. And I recommend those if you do like bullet journaling or any type of journaling, really. They're really nice. They're not all super saturated, but they're all very thin and like easy to use, and that's why I recommend them for that. And I also didn't have any problems with like the black fine liners bleeding when I went over them with the MasterMarkers. So yeah, that's all I'm really asking for. So in summary, I do really like these markers, and I'm planning on keeping them in the actual clear plastic storage case, even though one of them's kind of broken. But I'm going to store them horizontally because that's what's best for markers. You don't really want to store them vertically because one side can dry out, and then when you need it, it's not going to work. I'm a cheapskate, and I'm always going to be a cheapskate. So I like the cheapest markers I can find, but these are, in fact, the cheapest brush markers that I have yet found. So I'm really glad that I purchased them because I do want to get better at markers and getting more comfortable with the saturated colors. And these brush markers are really fun to use, and being a marker noob who doesn't know what colors she needs, having the large variety is really cool. So I learn which colors that I learn to love, and I do really like my grays. But yeah. But even though these seem expensive to me, if you compare them to like the market standards, like Copic markers, they're super cheap. Like holy cow! And even if you compare them to Winsor & Newton, you're getting a major discount. And that's the reason I like them, because I feel like I'm getting a steal. If, though, you think, like me, that these are a bit on the expensive end and that's not something that you can afford, I'm always going to recommend my first markers, the Ohuhu markers, because for a beginner, they are just so perfect. And I love them. I still use them to this day. Like, they're really great, and there's a lot of pastels in there, so, I mean, you know. But in the end, the MasterMarkers are the cheapest brush markers that I've been able to find. And I like all the colors. They're all nice. They all work well. I didn't have any that were dried out, except for the fine liners. I had one that was dried out of those. If you want to see how these markers look when you put them all together and you actually use them in an illustration, you can check out my last week's video where I tried them all out. And yeah, if you're interested in learning more about these markers, or you're interested in actually purchasing them, I'll have a link in the description so you can like read more up on them or anything like that. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I hope this review was insightful in some way and maybe helpful. Yeah, I had a lot of fun using these markers, and I plan on keeping them for a very long time. So, yeah, I think they were worth it. I have a hard time spending that much money on something. I know. It's just difficult for me. But someday I do want to purchase Copic markers, which are way over my budget right now. So, I don't know. One day when I am rich, you know? Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys all next week, and I hope you have a delicious evening full of waffles. Bye.